What happens when a man-child is left to navigate adulthood using only the survival tools of a broken past? When emotional immaturity is mistaken for charm and generational wounds are passed down like heirlooms. Baby Boy isn't just a hood classic. It's a raw, emotionally charged psychological portrait of a man at war with himself. On today's episode of Sight Screen Perspectives, we're unpacking the deep psychological layers of Baby Boy, diving into trauma, arrested development, toxic masculinity, mother-son enmeshment, and the emotional landmines of growing up without guidance. This isn't just about Jody. It's about the countless real-life baby boys trapped between boyhood and manhood, searching for identity in the ruins of dysfunction. Directed by the late John Singleton, Baby Boy is a film that centers around 20-year-old Joseph Jody Summers, a young black man living in South Central Los Angeles. Though he's a father to 2 children by 2 different women, Jody still lives at home with his mother and shows little interest in maturing. Jody is a textbook example of arrested development, a concept in psychology that refers to cessation of psychological growth, usually due to trauma or prolonged dependency. Although chronologically a man, Jody operates emotionally and psychologically like an adolescent. He avoids responsibilities, cheats in relationships, lashes out when criticized, and expects unconditional nurturing, especially from the women in his life. His mindset is rooted in entitlement, yet underpinned by fear. He clings to his childhood because the adult world feels too heavy, too unstable. This is evident in his rationalization of living at home. I'm not a grown man, I'm still my mama's baby. That line, while humorous on the surface, is the film's psychological thesis. One of the most striking and symbolically loaded scenes in Baby Boy comes at the very beginning. Jody, fully grown, floating nude inside a massive dark womb. Singleton doesn't ease us into Jody's psychology, he immerses us literally in it. This surreal visual isn't just cinematic flair, it's a psychological metaphor for where Jody is emotionally and developmentally. The womb in psychology and mythology often represents safety, dependency, and the pre-birth state, where one is nurtured, protected, and not yet burdened by the demands of the world. For Jody, the womb represents the place he psychologically refuses to leave. He is biologically an adult, but emotionally, he clings to the comfort and protection of childhood. Singleton uses this bold visual to signal that Jody may be out of the womb physically, but mentally and emotionally, he remains there. This scene can also be viewed through the lens of arrested development and trauma. The womb isn't just a metaphor for safety, it's a symbol of avoidance. Jody's fear of independence, responsibility, and failure is so profound that he spiritually longs to return to a space where none of those expectations exist. The womb becomes a symbol of regression, a place he retreats to when manhood feels overwhelming. Alternatively, the image can be interpreted as a potential rebirth. Singleton may be asking us, will Jody be reborn into adulthood? Will he finally emerge from the safety of dependency and confront the pain and growth that come with maturity? The rest of the film becomes that journey, not of a man growing up, but of a boy deciding if he even wants to. Ultimately, this opening scene sets the psychological tone of the film. Baby Boy isn't about Jody's external struggles, it's about his internal war between safety and growth, fear and responsibility, womb and the world. Jody's immaturity didn't happen in a vacuum. He is a product of his environment, an environment marked by fatherlessness, economic instability, and systemic neglect. The absence of a constant father figure left Jody with no roadmap to healthy masculinity. Instead, he pieces together his identity through hypersexuality, street validation, and emotional manipulation. These are survival tactics, ways of asserting control in a world that offers him very little of it. His immaturity is not simply selfishness, it's also a trauma response. In many ways, Jody is emotionally frozen, navigating the world as a scared boy in a man's body, reacting to conflict with fear-based behavior rather than grounded decision-making. One of the most psychologically rich dynamics in the film is the relationship between Jody and his mother Juanita. Their bond is a classic case of emotional enmeshment, where boundaries are blurred and dependency is masked as closeness. Juanita, in her effort to protect her son from the harsh realities of the world, coddles him emotionally. Jody in turn relies on her not just for housing but for emotional safety, a place where he can be unchallenged, unaccountable, and infantilized. But this relationship comes at a cost. Juanita's enabling behavior contributes to Jody's arrested development, while Jody's emotional dependence stifles Juanita's growth and autonomy. When she begins dating Melvin, Jody reacts not as a man respecting her space, but as a jealous child afraid of losing his place. Jody's view of masculinity is deeply confused. On one hand, he rejects responsibility and maturity. On the other, he believes dominance, sexual conquest, and emotional detachment define what it means to be a man. This is a product of toxic masculinity, the internalized belief that strength means control and manhood means superiority. He isolates between acting like a child and posturing like an alpha male. His emotional outbursts with Yvette, his violent confrontations with Rodney, and his discomfort with Melvin all stem from insecurity, not strength. Jody wants to be respected as a man but hasn't developed the emotional intelligence, consistency, or accountability that manhood truly requires. Jody's relationship with Yvette is a psychological study in codependency. Yvette enables Jody's behavior by repeatedly taking him back after emotional and physical betrayals. She provides financial support, offers nurturing, and hopes for change, all while sacrificing her own peace. Jody, meanwhile, views Yvette as both a maternal figure and an object of control. Their relationship is toxic, yet rooted in deep emotional wounds on both sides. Neither knows how to love in a way that heals, only in ways that repeat cycles of trauma. Yvette becomes both caretaker and adversary. Jody becomes both lover and burden. Their love is passionate but dysfunctional, intimate but unsafe. Melvin, Juanita's ex-convict boyfriend, plays a crucial role in Jody's psychological arc. He represents everything Jody fears about adulthood: strength, authority, responsibility, and the ability to protect. But Melvin also represents the type of man Jody could become if he faces demons. Their confrontations aren't just about turf, they're about identity. Jody sees Melvin as a threat to his emotional stronghold over his mother and as a reminder that manhood requires accountability. When Melvin finally physically confronts Jody, it's symbolic, a clash between fantasy manhood and earned manhood. That moment forces Jody to look in the mirror, and what he sees is frightening. One of the film's most subtle yet powerful arcs is Jody's evolution as a father. Initially, he treats his children as extensions of himself, not as beings he's responsible for. He visits, plays, and shows up when convenient, but rarely provides stability. It isn't until the birth of his daughter with Yvette that something begins to shift. The emotional weight of bringing another life into the world starts to crack his immature shell. Singleton suggests that breaking generational cycles begin with facing the discomfort of growth. For Jody, stepping into fatherhood, real fatherhood, is the first step towards psychological healing. Jody's story is a case study in several psychological frameworks. Attachment theory explains his anxious, preoccupied style with both his mother and romantic partners. Family systems theory explains the enmeshment between him and Juanita. Toxic masculinity and social learning theory explain how Jody adopted distorted ideas about manhood from his environment. And cognitive dissonance theory explains the internal conflict between the man Jody thinks he is versus the man he knows he needs to become. These frameworks help us understand that Jody is not simply bad, he is unhealed. His behaviors are protective but not productive. His journey is less about rebellion and more about fear. Baby Boy also forces us to confront the cultural and systemic forces shaping Jody's psychology. In many Black communities, boys are raised to be emotionally guarded, taught to value dominance over vulnerability, and often raised by single mothers forced to wear both parental hats. The weight of racism, poverty, and intergenerational trauma creates conditions where emotional growth becomes secondary to survival. Jody's story isn't uncommon, it's familiar. That familiarity is why the film resonates so deeply and why its psychological themes remain relevant 2 decades later. Baby Boy is more than a coming-of-age story. It's a psychological excavation. Jody represents the emotionally stuck man, full of charm, excuses, and pain. But he also represents the possibility of change. His journey shows that growth is messy, accountability is painful, and healing requires more than love, it requires letting go. As we reflect on this film, let us not judge Jody as a caricature, but see him as a composite of real people, those we know, those we love, and maybe even parts of ourselves. Understanding Jody is a step toward healing the cycle, because before we can change behavior, we have to understand where it comes from. Have you ever felt like Jody, stuck between wanting to be more and fearing what growth requires? Or maybe you've been Yvette or Juanita, caught in the emotional fallout of someone else's pain. I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let's talk about what Baby Boy means to you from a psychological lens. And if you're new here, subscribe to Sight Screen Perspectives, where I decode the minds behind the movies. Let's keep peeling back the layers because the screen only shows parts of the story.